Cool. Now our next guest is Imani Alfayo. Hi, Imani.
Hey Sandras, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Everything's good here, man. First of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be here today. Um, uh, Also, just want to mention, that my thoughts and prayers are with anyone who's directly or indirectly been affected by the coronavirus. And I think we should spread positive vibes. And I'm just glad that we got to hear what Felix was saying. I think his energy is what should be spreading around in terms of infections. If there's anything that should be going around right now, and generally, I like the attitude that he's given everyone out here, and I think that's what we really need to have the right mindset during this unprecedented times. So once again,
Absolutely.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And absolutely, you're absolutely spot on. Thank you. How is Dar es Salaam? Are you in lockdown? What part
We're
of-
technically not in lockdown, and for various reasons. I think we kind of had a head start here,
Mm,
considering we didn't have an that high a number in terms of reported infections, and we were able to mitigate or put rather preventive strategies earlier on. So a lot of what has been done is basically preventive measures in terms of just allowing people to put in control of how to infect, washing your hands, sanitizing, practicing a
yeah.
little social distancing, and
Yeah.
simply because, we kind of had a head start, we didn't have that much in terms of reporting.
Okay. Okay. Cool. It's good to know. And tell us now about your entrepreneurship journey. You have started a number of businesses. I remember when we met in Dar es Salaam, like I was listening to you, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have money speak to startup grind people in Cape Town, and so excited to have you. Tell us about your entrepreneurship journey briefly, and then get to and get Pesa.
Yeah, so basically, I could say like I consider myself a career entrepreneur. Basically, started one, and when it succeeded, we basically jumped on to building solving a bigger problem. So I eventually started solving design problems. I'm a designer by training. Moved into the agency business, did a bit of digital marketing there, and then moved on into solving GetPesa. And the whole idea behind GetPesa was basically trying to solve a larger societal problem, And this was the fact that coming also from a banking background, a lot of people within the country at the time and still to date are financially illiterate. When you look
Mm,
at it broken down in terms of numbers, we have about a 72% numeracy illiteracy rate within Tanzania. And when you look at it within the region, also in East Africa, it's an overlapping problem. What does this mean is that about 70% of the population really cannot add or subtract.
mm,
So for me, I looked at this, it really becomes a bit immoral or unethical to put money into someone's hands if they really can't count it. So
mm,
at the time, it was the whole buzzword was financial inclusion, but I felt like a lot of people are putting the cart before the horse, and simply because we felt that people need to be educated before they could actually get included financially.
mm, mm,
So a lot of the work we've been doing has basically been around getting people to get more numeracy skills. This is in terms of understanding financial services. So at the very core of what we do is basically trying to educate people. At the same time, we're trying to level the playing ground in terms of making financial services easily accessible and affordable for everyone. And at the very top, if I were to layer it, is whereby we actually allow people to access financial products. Now, if you step back a bit, you realize a lot of these people who are actually, if I should call them semi-illiterate, are really poor people, for lack of a better word. They are
mm,
marginalized in terms of the communities they operate in, and they're underprivileged. So we've had quite the journey, if I should say. Initially, when we were trying to disseminate communication in terms of what the curriculum would look like for finance, we tried rolling out a digital tool. And I think this was one of the first pitfalls we encountered, when you really distance yourself from the customer and you're trying to create these really good technical solutions, very fancy looking apps, and you realize that there's actually a misalignment with your audience. So
Mm,
I guess one of the biggest takeaways that we've heard is, especially when you're dealing with people who really are not that fluent in giving feedback, is you really have to have your feet on the ground. You need to have your pulse as where the customers are. And I know the common term is, you need to talk to your customers, but you can imagine in East Africa, whereby a lot of people really cannot articulate themselves well in terms of what they really want to say when they're addressing or highlighting their problem. So it's part of the experience has been, you really have to be present, or actually spend an entire day to qualitatively source this data from this audience, because some of the things they really don't understand or perceive them as problems. So it actually takes someone who's out of context to sit with them and actually realize that they're very there's numerous pain points, and it's a friction in terms of how they actually conduct their day-to-day lives. So what we've been doing is, and the solution is very simple. You can imagine with poor people, whereby there's a lack of finance, everyone, the appetite for credit and money, is quite huge. So what we tried to do and what we're doing is we flip the narrative. How do we put money into people's pockets? And we came up with a curriculum and eventually solution that allows people to get money, and this surplus money is now what we allow people to lend to people who need money. So in a nutshell, we link lenders within the communities to borrowers. And an ideal scenario would be someone who's earning who's earning money out of their, probably selling fresh produce, would have an excess of, let's say, $5 equivalent based on their daily sales. And based on the education we're giving them, they're advised to basically save this money collectively, and that's where the initial part of the solution starts. And based on how they solve this, they save collectively, they're able to pool these resources, and other people who need the money within the community can borrow intermittently. So that way, there's that moral obligation within the society to actually give, as opposed to just taking all the time. So that's basically what we've been doing. Now, the purpose is quite simple, because one of the things we've been trying to do is, build resilience amongst this specific membership in the community. And I think for us with COVID-19, the coronavirus being here is more or less stress testing if the solutions we've been actually rolling out over the past 2.5 years really work, and probably the best takeaway would be it actually proves as a proof point that this is the right way to go, and it actually brings in more or less belief within the rest of the population, because we've been actually piloting within different groups across different regions within the country.
okay, that's incredible. Like, you've been looking at the the bottom of the pyramid, they're underserved, and then looking at it in terms of solving that problem, but also educating the people, and then creating a platform where people lend money into each other, and while building a profitable business, like, as opposed to just where it's either you are making just too much money and you're not helping people, or you are just helping people, you're not making money. How do you combine that? Because I find that a lot of times, um, entrepreneurs would either just want to do something which almost just goes like, just charitable, okay, and then they almost look down on the people who are making commercially viable businesses, and then others struggle to make a commercially viable business also enhance people's lives. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Yeah, you bring that up, is because you can imagine the existing solutions. that were being used, was basically they're basically free, if I should say. So yes, you are reducing the friction in terms of ordinarily someone would walk to their neighbor and borrow money, or make a phone call and ask Sandras, do you have an extra $10 I could borrow? I'll pay you back next week. And when you bring in a whole platform that makes it more convenient, and you want to now bring in a tax, if I should call it, in terms of a fee,
Mm.
in order for you to be able to sustain your business, it became a bit of a there was a bit of pushback. But then again, how we went about it, and probably I'll expound on how we actually make money, is we actually now structured this product. So the first idea is we actually made a pull effect be that people can actually collect money. But now, when we structured products, for example, when in terms of like social protection, like a mild welfare, what ordinarily someone in a white collar job would have as a pension fund, we kind of structured products along that. So whereby, and this was being seconded on a formal financial institution that was bearing interest. So there was additional a revenue stream coming in from that. But of course, based on the activity that had a lot of frequency, which was the borrowing, so we made it very simple. So what we do is we charge an application fee for whether a loan is successfully disbursed or not, and the fee is very minimal. And one thing I should also say is that, you know, this goes against what other conventional lenders are doing. Most people would charge both an application fee, and a lot of the income would come from interest. But it becomes very difficult to have a conversation around interest, where, first of all, they don't understand. When you bring in the percentage sign to someone who cannot multiply or divide, you've totally lost them. And then secondly, they're not used to paying for the product. So we charge an application fee, which is an equivalent of, I'd say probably less, it's about 100 Tanzanian shillings, which would be like about a cent of a dollar. So it's really minimal. And at that particular point where someone is applying, they have an actual need. So they actually see value in making that payment.
There's a question from Nancy. Says, I like the moral I like the moral obligation to repay. Does the repayment have to be done before a new lender gets money?
So again, if you're familiar with the community-based lending approach, what we call revolving circles, these are all what I'd say deposit-backed borrowing. So you actually have to save, and you can only borrow against a percentage of what you already have uh,
Mm,
saved. So again, remember the notion here is to encourage people to save first, and based on that, because remember, we don't fund our own balance sheet. We're not like your conventional financial institution that would actually lend. So it is the
mm.
community that has actually pooled resources together to lend against each other.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And then question around having a founding team, a co-founder. How do you go about choosing that? And when do you decide you're going to get somebody as a co-founder? When do you just pay them? How do you do that?
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned. So we have a very diverse founding team, and those three things we asked ourselves. We had a concept, we had an idea initially in terms of what we wanted to do. It was all drafted on paper, very detailed, and there was three things we asked ourselves before we could actually begin. So initially, can we build this solution that we have dreamt? The
Mm,
answer was no. None of us have a technical background. And the second thing we asked ourselves is, do we have the money to pay people to build it? And yeah, we looked amongst ourselves and we're like, okay, some guys have some change and they're going to save. And like, okay. Um, and the third question we asked ourselves, assuming we build a product or we pay someone to build the product, do we have the expertise to take it to market and sell it? And that's where, at least the initial founding team, which was myself and a friend of mine called Ben and Fred, were like, okay, yeah, we can take this to market. So at that particular point, is like that criteria really set out, in terms of uh, the commitment from the very beginning. It goes beyond ideation, and that there's a lot of heavy lifting that will need to be done before we actually get to market. get the first sales, or actually people actually to start paying for this product. So one thing we were smart to go about is we had a very broad advisory team, and this was not limited to legal, because again we were playing in financial services, and you can imagine when you're in financial services, this is a very heavily regulated um, sector. So we sought very good legal advice in terms of how to go about the project. We also sought advisors to sit on advisory board in terms of how we could manage the key stakeholders. And in this case, you have other financial institutions, you have the regulator being the central bank. We also had industry experts who, again, remember, we have this knowledge gap in terms of technical advice. So we actually, using our own social networks, invited some of our friends to advise on matters technical, in as much as we were going to get people to help us build the product and pay them. And then, of course, just looking at other advices. So yes, the founding team was small based on the initial set of criteria I've just mentioned, but we constantly sought advice from industry experts to sit on what we'd call our advisory board.
Okay. And what advice now do you have for founders with the current global crisis? What advice would you have? The ones who are thinking about starting, and the ones who have started, and the ones who feel, who feel like don't know what to do with their businesses.
Yeah, so I think again, it's all about mindset, because you look at it this way. Again, an entrepreneur, it's a very lonely journey, I must admit. For us, it's about 3 years just doing GetPesa, but you really need the right mindset, and you just need to know that initially it's not going to be easy. And during that time, again, you really need to grow thick skin. You really need to find the right partners, a lot of collaboration. You really need to manage the excess risk. Uh, I think the parting shot for me here is you really need to plan for the worst case scenarios and hope you fail.
Great, great. Type 1 to say thank you and a big up to Imani. Thanks. Great. Thank you very much, Imani. And thanks, really, thanks for sharing your story and your advice and how you're working in East Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
Sandras.
call. Cheers.
Bye-bye.